They thought she was just another black woman to push around. Officers Cooper and Briggs dragged Alicia Monroe into court determined to make her pay for a crime she never committed. But what they didn't know was that one piece of ID in her bag could turn the entire prosecution into a national scandal. When the truth comes out, will the courtroom erupt or crumble? If that has you hooked already, tap like, share this story with a friend, and subscribe. Now let's dive in. It was a Monday morning, the kind where the courthouse parking lot looked like a hive cars shuffling and attorneys rushing with coffee in one hand and files in the other. Over in the far corner, a sleek black SUV with government plates sat under the shade of an old oak tree. Alicia Monroe stepped out, locking the door with a soft click. She didn't dress to impress, just a simple navy suit and low heels, but something about her presence made people step aside. Shoulders square, gaze calm, she walked like she had no reason to fear anyone. But before she could take more than 3 steps, a voice cut through the morning air. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." Officer Ryan Cooper, thick-built, late 30s, white, strode toward her with a smirk that didn't belong on an officer's face. At his side was Officer Jenna Briggs, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, the kind of cop who'd rather bark orders than ask questions. Cooper's eyes swept over the SUV, then over Alicia. "No way you bought this," he said, tilting his head, like the accusation was just common sense. Alicia's brow lifted slightly. "Excuse me." Briggs stepped closer, resting her hand casually on her cuffs. "We've had reports of a stolen federal vehicle in the area," she said, voice clipped. "Yours matches the description." Her gaze traveled from Alicia's shoes to her hair in a slow, dismissive scan, as if the outfit alone was proof she didn't belong behind the wheel of such a car. By now, a few people had slowed their pace, sensing something was happening. That's when Maya Carter, a college student with quick hands and an even quicker phone, hit go live. Within seconds, the screen lit up with hearts and comments, 300 viewers, and climbing. Alicia's eyes flicked toward the growing circle of onlookers, then back to the officers. Her voice was steady, even warm, but with an edge that made it clear she wasn't intimidated. "Officers, I'm asking you plainly, what's your probable cause for detaining me?" Cooper chuckled under his breath. "Probable cause, lady, I don't need a lecture on the Constitution." A small smile curved Alicia's lips. "That's fine. I can give one for free." The crowd let out a low ripple of laughter. Cooper's jaw tightened. Briggs shifted her stance, tapping her cuffs with one finger like a silent threat. "You gonna show us some ID," Briggs said, "or we're gonna do this the hard way." "And what way is that?" Alicia asked, tilting her head slightly. Not a challenge, but a question meant to make them think. The phone screens in the crowd glowed brighter. Someone whispered, "Oh, this is about to get good." Cooper stepped in, closing the gap. "Ma'am, put your hands where I can see them." Alicia didn't move. Her voice was low, but it carried. "I'll comply when you tell me which law I've pumped. That's my right under the 4th Amendment, and you know it." That pause, just 3 seconds, hung in the air like a held breath. The viewers online surged past 1,000. The comments flew. "She knows her rights. Don't back down." They looked shook. For a moment, Cooper's eyes darted toward the cameras. Briggs caught it too. The balance had shifted slightly, just enough for Alicia to know she had their attention and maybe their nerves. She straightened her jacket and said, "Now, are we going to talk like professionals, or do you want to explain to the court why you detained a citizen without cause in front of witnesses?" The crowd murmured. Cooper's smirk faltered. Briggs hesitated, glancing toward the courthouse doors. And that was just the first round. Maya's phone panned across the scene, catching every sharp movement, every tightened jaw. The viewer count jumped. 1,500, 1,800, then 2,000. The comments started flooding in a rolling wave of outrage. "This is racial profiling. She's calm. They're aggressive. Classic case. Somebody get their badge numbers." Alicia's gaze stayed locked on the officers. "I want to make a phone call," she said evenly. Cooper shook his head. "Not how this works." From his left, Jenna let out a low laugh, the kind meant to cut. "You've got the look, gown, nice suit, nice shoes. Guess crime pays better than I thought." That drew a sharp inhale from the crowd. Maya's camera zoomed in on Alicia's face, still calm, but her eyes sharpened like glass catching sunlight. Before Alicia could reply, a voice rang out from the edge of the circle. "I know her." Heads turned, Mrs. Lorraine Hayes, 73, small frame, but a voice that could carry through a courtroom pushed her way forward. "She's no thief," she said, jabbing a finger toward Alicia. I worked at the courthouse for 30 years. I know who she is. But before the crowd could absorb it, Jenna stepped in front of her, palm out. Ma'am, step back. The words were clipped, but her arm wasn't gentle. Lorraine stumbled a half step, clutching her purse. Hey, you can't shove her, someone yelled from the back. The murmur turned into a low growl of disapproval. Alicia's eyes flicked toward her SUV. The black leather briefcase sat on the passenger seat, just visible through the tinted glass. Inside was everything: her Pentagon identification, classified documents for the hearing she was heading to. One flash of that ID, and this farce would end. But she didn't move, not yet. A public confrontation in the parking lot could explode into something she couldn't control. Cooper raised his radio to his mouth, voice clipped and official, now as if he were narrating for the record. Suspect in custody. Transporting to Courtroom 4 for expedited federal review. The phrase sounded clean, procedural, perfect for paper, and perfect for getting her inside without anyone asking too many questions. Maya caught the shift instantly. Courtroom 4, she said loud enough for the live stream to hear. He just said they're taking her inside. She scanned the comments, then raised her voice again. If you're watching and you're nearby, get down here now. Witness this in person. Don't let them do this in the dark. The viewers went wild, hearts and angry face emojis raining down. Someone typed, "Already on my way. I'm 2 blocks out." Another, "This ends up on the news tonight." Alicia stood still, spine straight, letting the tension build. Every second she didn't resist made Cooper look more impatient, more unsettled. Every phone in the crowd felt like a weapon, quiet, unblinking, and ready to fire the truth into the world. The courthouse air was heavy, too quiet for a Monday morning. Beyond the polished brass doors of Courtroom 2, a hearing on national security policy was already underway. The gallery was full, the murmur of lawyers and reporters blending into a low, tense hum. Only one seat in the front row sat empty, Alicia Monroe's seat. The absence didn't go unnoticed. Several heads in the front bench tilted toward the door, expecting her to appear any moment. A few whispered among themselves, their brows furrowed. "She never misses a session," one aide muttered. "If she's not here, something's wrong." 3 floors above, Commissioner Daniel Hayes, tall, silver-haired, dressed in the same crisp navy suit he'd worn for years, was in a budget meeting when his assistant rushed in. She leaned close, her voice tight. "Sir, the police just brought in a black woman through the front entrance. They're saying she's a federal theft suspect." Daniel's pen froze mid-signature. A black woman. His tone sharpened. Who they didn't say, but people outside think it might be someone high level. Meanwhile, down in the marble-lined main hallway, Undersecretary Thomas Green from the Pentagon was pacing. His phone buzzed once, twice, then again. Each time the name Alicia Monroe flashed across his screen, each time the call went unanswered. His jaw flexed, a sign of the control he was trying to keep. He strode to the clerk's desk, leaning in just enough for his voice to carry. "I need to speak to Alicia Monroe immediately." "Where is she?" The clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, blinked in confusion. "Sir, I haven't seen her this morning. Isn't she in the hearing?" "If she was," Green said, his voice low and firm, "I wouldn't be standing here." Back inside Courtroom 2, the chairman at the bench glanced toward Alicia's empty seat. His fingers tapped against the wood in a restless rhythm. Without the Pentagon counsel present, he murmured to his colleague, "This vote is going to tip the wrong way." And it was true. The proposed bill, packed with clauses that would quietly expand federal surveillance powers, was balanced on a knife's edge. Alicia's presence, her voice was critical. She'd been the sharpest critic in the room during earlier sessions, dissecting legal language until every loophole lay exposed. Without her, the defense against the bill would falter. At that moment, the double doors creaked open, not to admit Alicia, but to allow a junior staffer in. He passed a folded note to one of the aides in the front. The aide read it, frowned, and leaned toward the chairman. "Sir, word is she's here, but in custody." The chairman's eyes narrowed. Custody? On what grounds? No one could answer. Out in the hallway, Green's patience was evaporating. His phone rang again. This time it was the Secretary of Defense himself. Green stepped into an alcove, voice dropping, but carrying a barely contained fury. "Yes, sir. She's in the building. No, not in the hearing. Apparently detained." "I'm trying to..." He cut himself off as a ripple of commotion rolled down the corridor. 2 uniformed officers were moving toward the far end, their pace brisk, the click of their boots echoing off the marble. Between them walked a woman whose wrists were bound loosely in front of her, posture straight, despite the restraints. Alicia Monroe. Even from a distance, Green could see her expression calm, unflinching, eyes forward. She didn't look at the gathering stares from court staff or the few journalists lingering near the benches. Her gaze was fixed ahead as though she were walking into a meeting she'd been expecting all along. Daniel Hayes reached the top of the central staircase just in time to see her pass below. His breath caught. He knew that face had seen her across committee tables and briefings that shaped policy, and now she was being escorted like a criminal. He started down the steps 2 at a time. "Officers," he called, his voice cutting through the chatter. Cooper glanced up but kept moving, Jenna's hand resting casually near the holster at her hip. Inside Courtroom 2, the absence of Alicia had shifted from an inconvenience to a crisis. A reporter in the gallery typed furiously into his phone, "Rumors Pentagon counsel detained in courthouse." Developing. The hum in the room grew louder, tension tightening like a drawn bowstring. In the hallway, Green stepped into Cooper's path. "Uncuff her." "Now," Cooper's lip curled. "Sir, we're following procedure. Federal vehicle theft investigation." "Procedure?" Green's voice turned cold. "You're detaining the lead counsel for today's national security hearing, and you're doing it in the middle of the building where she works." Jenna's eyes flicked to Alicia, then back to Green. "If she's so important," she said under her breath, "she'll clear it up inside." Alicia, still calm, spoke for the first time since entering the courthouse. "Mr. Green," she said evenly, "I'll handle this. Just make sure the vote doesn't happen without me." Her tone was steady, but there was an edge beneath it, a warning, a promise. Green stepped back, jaw tight. Daniel Hayes was now only a few feet away, his face unreadable, but his eyes sharp. He didn't say Alicia's name out loud, but the recognition was there in the sudden stillness between them. And in that stillness, you could feel it, the quiet, before something irreversible. The marble hallway felt longer than it should have, each footstep, sharp against the floor, echoing under the high vaulted ceiling. Officer Ryan Cooper gripped Alicia Monroe's arm just enough to make it look official, just enough to make it hurt. Officer Jenna Briggs stayed on the other side, one hand hovering near her sidearm, the other gesturing for the crowd to keep back. But the crowd didn't keep back. From the moment they'd left the front entrance, people had been trailing them, some still as suits, from courtroom homes upstairs, others in jeans and jackets from the parking lot. More than a few held up their phones, recording every second. Maya Carter was near the front live stream, still going, the red live badge burning bright on her screen. Comments scrolled so fast they blurred. Cooper raised his voice not to Alicia, but to the audience now gathering around them. "We're bringing her in for questioning on federal vehicle theft," he announced, letting the words hang like a public verdict. His tone wasn't just procedural, it was meant to stick. A murmur rippled through the hallway. Some scoffed, others leaned closer as if to memorize Alicia's face. From the far side of the hall, Mrs. Lorraine Hayes pushed forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "I know her," she shouted, breathless, arm outstretched. "That woman works for Step Back, ma'am," Jenna snapped, blocking her with a sharp movement of her arm. Lorraine stumbled a little but didn't look away from Alicia. Alicia's expression didn't change. She kept her gaze straight ahead, as if Lorraine's plea and the dozens of cameras were all part of some noise she'd learned to tune out. Halfway down the corridor, Jenna's eyes dropped to the slim black leather case in Alicia's grip. It wasn't large, but the way Alicia kept it close told her it mattered. Without asking, Jenna reached for it. Alicia's hand tightened. She pulled it in toward her chest, her voice low but cutting. "These are classified Pentagon documents," she warned, her eyes locking on Jenna's. "You don't have the clearance. You open this, you're violating federal law." Jenna hesitated. Her fingers twitched, the calculation plain in her face: push further and risk trouble or back off. She let her hand drop, but stayed close, the message clear. This isn't over. The moment passed, but it didn't go unnoticed. Phones caught it. Whispers spread. That was when Erica Valdez appeared, weaving through the crowd with the practiced speed of someone who'd been chasing stories for years. Camera in one hand, press badge swinging from her neck, she angled herself to catch Alicia's face, the case, and the officers all in one shot. "Miss Monroe," she called, voice steady but loud enough to carry, "are you being detained as part of your work for the Pentagon?" Cooper shot her a glare. "No comment. Step aside." Erica didn't. She kept her camera rolling, panning between Alicia and the officers. Somewhere online, 1,000 strangers were trying to decide who they believed. They turned another corner, the double doors to courtroom 4 now in sight. Cooper leaned slightly toward Jenna, his voice low but not low enough to avoid the nearest microphones. "If we can pin this on her," he muttered, "the debt from 2018 gets paid in full." Jenna smirked but kept her eyes forward. "Then let's make sure she doesn't walk out of here looking clean." Alicia caught it. She didn't react, not with words, not with so much as a flicker in her expression. But her shoulders straightened and the grip on her case seemed to anchor her. Whatever this was, whatever history they thought they were about to rewrite, she clearly had no intention of letting them finish it. The crowd was larger now, the air hotter with the press of bodies and the thrum of quiet outrage. Someone muttered racial profiling. Someone else called out, "That's harassment." But the officers kept walking, their boots tapping out a steady rhythm toward the waiting courtroom. And if you'd been there, if you'd seen her walk that hall, with her chin lifted just so you might have thought the cuffs on her wrists weren't holding her back at all. The heavy wooden doors to courtroom 4 swung open, and the noise from the hallway spilled in for just a second before dying against the room's solemn hush. Officer Cooper led Alicia inside Jenna close behind both, wearing the kind of satisfaction that comes from thinking they have already won. The local judge, an older man with a stiff jaw and a gavel that looked like it had never been questioned, sat high on the bench. He wasn't the federal judge expected for today's proceedings. This was a stand-in, someone filling the seat until the real authority returned. Still, his presence carried weight, and his eyes narrowed as the trio approached. Maya Carter slipped in with the crowd, her phone still up live stream a counter, ticking past 20,000 viewers. The scrolling comments were a flood. Now accusations of racial profiling, demands for Alicia's release, and disbelief at what they were watching. Lorraine Hayes had managed to get a seat in the back row. She sat forward, her hands clenched in her lap, trying to catch Alicia's eye. Every time Alicia glanced her way, Lorraine made a subtle motion, 2 fingers to her temple, then toward the briefcase. Alicia gave the smallest nod, but her expression never softened. The judge looked to Cooper. "Officers, state the charge." Cooper stepped forward with the practiced authority of someone who'd been waiting for this. "Your Honor, the defendant was apprehended operating a government-issued SUV reported stolen earlier this morning. Further review of her record uncovered prior concerns regarding questionable conduct." He slid a thin file onto the clerk's desk. Even from the back, you could see it wasn't fresh dog-eared pages, old photocopies, the kind of paperwork you pull when you want to smear, not prove. There was a shift in the room's air, a faint ripple of judgment from those who didn't know Alicia, and a harder glare from those who did. Alicia didn't flinch. She didn't interrupt. She simply fixed Cooper with a gaze sharp enough to slice through the pretense, then let her eyes drift across the benches, as if cataloging every reaction. The judge tapped his pen. "Defendant, do you have a statement?" Alicia's silence was deliberate. She wasn't refusing out of fear anyone paying attention could tell. This was a silence with edges, the kind that makes people lean forward without realizing it. The judge frowned. "Very well. Bailiff, bring me her belongings." Jenna moved first heels, clicking against the floor as she crossed to Alicia. Her hand hovered just inches from the black leather case. The crowd seemed to draw in a collective breath. Alicia shifted, not stepping back, but turning so the case was flush against her side. "Be careful," she said quietly, but the warning was clear. "Those are classified Pentagon documents." Jenna's eyes flicked to the judge, waiting for permission. The judge hesitated, pen tapping faster now. "We'll determine what is and isn't relevant once it's in my possession." In the gallery, Lorraine half rose from her seat. "Your Honor." "Sit down," the judge snapped. Lorraine sat, but her lips pressed into a thin line. Maya's camera caught everything the angle just right to show Jenna's hand reaching the judge, watching, and Alicia's posture unshaken. Online, the comment section exploded. "Don't let them take it. She's playing chess, not checkers. They have no idea who they're messing with." But inside the courtroom, the tone was shifting. This wasn't just an arrest anymore. This was a push to strip Alicia of control, right there in front of an audience, both in the room and across the internet. The judge leaned back, the weight of decision settling on him. "Given the nature of the allegations," he began, "I'm inclined to authorize a temporary hold until the matter is—" That was the moment the room went still. You could feel it, the collective tightening in the air. The realization that if he signed that order, Alicia's position would shift from deliberate silence to enforced powerlessness. And yet she stood there, not pleading, not scrambling, just watching. Like she knew this wasn't the real fight, just the opening move. The sharp ring of a phone cut through the tense air like a blade. Everyone in the courtroom seemed to pause for a heartbeat, their eyes darting toward the sound. Alicia didn't flinch, but Cooper's jaw tightened. He leaned closer to her, his voice low and edged with irritation. "Turn it off," he growled. It was the 12th call from Undersecretary Thomas Green that morning. Alicia's phone vibrated stubbornly in her bag, the caller ID flashing again before she silenced it with a steady hand. She knew why he was calling, but right now there was no safe way to answer. Across the aisle, Erica Valdez raised her hand. "Your Honor," she said, her voice carrying a mix of politeness and determination. "I'm requesting permission to film." "This is a matter of public interest." The judge's lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't a media circus," she replied. But Erica held her gaze unblinking. A few beats of silence passed before the judge exhaled sharply. "Fine, discreetly, and stay out of the way." The tension in the room shifted. Erica set her camera in place, her lens capturing every nervous glance, every flicker of movement. Somewhere in the second row, Maya leaned closer to Lorraine. Her whisper was almost lost under the shuffle of feet and papers. "We have to let people see the ID," she murmured. Lorraine's eyes, sharp and knowing, flicked toward Alicia, then back to Maya. "We will," she whispered, "but at the right moment." Meanwhile, outside the heavy double doors, Green was still fighting to get in. His voice carried down the hallway. "I need to speak to her, now." A uniformed officer planted himself squarely in Green's path. "Sir, we're in the middle of active proceedings. You don't understand." Green cut in, his voice low but urgent. "This is not what you think it is." The officer didn't move. His posture was rigid, his tone flat. "Orders are orders." Inside, Maya's pulse quickened. She could feel the moment building like a wave gathering strength. Lorraine leaned in again, her voice calm but commanding. "When I stand up, get your camera ready. Make sure the world sees what they're trying to bury." At the back of the courtroom, one of the deputies shifted his weight. His gaze wandered over the gallery, then landed on Lorraine. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition. He straightened slightly, his authority suddenly tinged with uncertainty. "You," he muttered under his breath, almost too quietly to hear. He took a step forward, then hesitated, his eyes darting between Lorraine and the judge. It was only a brief lapse, but it was enough. Green, still at the door, saw the momentary crack in the blockade. His eyes narrowed, calculating. He stepped forward just once, closing the distance to the entrance. Inside, the air seemed to thicken. Alicia's gaze swept the room, noting every shifting posture, every darting glance. She could feel the invisible threads tightening, the kind that could either pull everything apart or snap into perfect alignment. The judge glanced toward the clock, tapping her pen against the bench. "Let's proceed," she said, her voice clipped. But even as she spoke, it was clear that the control she thought she had over the room was starting to fray. The tension in courtroom 4 was already razor thin, but what happened next cut right through it. Lorraine shot up from her seat, her voice slicing through the stale courtroom air. "Your Honor, I request no. I insist that Ms. Grant be allowed to verify her identity herself." The judge's gavel hovered midair. His brow furrowed. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds," Lorraine replied, her tone steady but dangerous, "that the truth has been strangled long enough in this room." Cooper sprang to his feet. "Absolutely not." From the press row, Erica's voice came sharp and clean, like a bell. "Stop her, and that's obstruction on record in front of the press and 40,000 live viewers." All eyes snapped to the judge. The weight of that number, 40,000, seemed to press down on his shoulders. He hesitated, lips parting, as if to object, then closed them again. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "Proceed." The room stilled. You could hear the buzz of the fluorescent lights. Alicia didn't rush. She stepped forward with the deliberate grace of someone who understood the power of silence. Her black leather briefcase hit the table with a muted thud. She flicked open the latches. Click, click, and the sound seemed unnaturally loud in the hush. Her hand emerged holding a single card, thick laminated and crowned with a gold embossed seal. She raised it high so there was no mistake, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Department of Defense. Pentagon." For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The courtroom might as well have been carved from stone. Then the dam broke. Gasps, hushed curses, the frantic clicking of camera shutters. Somewhere in the back, a reporter whispered, "Oh my God." The live stream chat exploded. Pentagon, are they insane? They cuffed a federal agent on duty. Someone's losing their badge tonight. The heavy double doors at the rear swung open. Green strode in, not with urgency, but with the unshakable calm of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. His badge flashed under the courtroom lights. She's on official duty. Green announced, his tone controlled but carrying like a warning siren. National security case. If anyone in this room values their career, I'd advise you to step back now. Cooper's face drained of color. His jaw flexed, but no words came. Jenna's fingers twitched near her holster before she froze, realizing just how deep they were standing in it. Lorraine, still on her feet, allowed herself a small, knowing smile. Looks like your little show's over, Detective. Green's gaze locked on the judge. Your Honor, I'll need Ms. Grant released immediately into federal custody. Any delay could be considered interference with a classified operation. The judge shifted in his seat, clearly weighing his next move under the crushing gaze of cameras in a swelling online audience. Outside the courtroom, news alerts were already pinging across phones. Pentagon official detained in small-town courtroom. And right there in that charged, frozen moment, everyone knew this was no longer about a supposed stolen car. This was about careers, reputations, and the kind of fallout that could topple more than just a case. Just moments ago, Alicia's Pentagon ID had silenced the entire courtroom. You could still feel the echo of that reveal hanging in the air like a suspended gavel. People were leaning forward in their seats, not daring to blink, as if afraid they might miss what came next. And Alicia, she wasn't wasting a second. She rose slowly, her composure unshaken, and turned toward the judge. Your Honor, I request to submit additional evidence relevant to the conduct of the arresting officer. Her voice wasn't raised, but every syllable carried weight. The judge gave a cautious nod, clearly aware of the tension coiling tighter with each passing moment. Alicia stepped to the center, holding a slim folder. She opened it, deliberately revealing pages that glinted faintly under the overhead lights. This, she said, sliding a printed chart onto the bench, is the precinct's own traffic stop record. Over the last year, black drivers were stopped 28% more often than white drivers, without any corresponding rise in violations. That's called profiling, Your Honor, and it's illegal. A ripple moved through the gallery. Cooper shifted in his seat, jaw clenched. His hand twitched toward his pen, but he didn't write anything. From the back, Maya adjusted her phone, zooming in tight on Cooper's face. Got you, she whispered under her breath. The live stream chat erupted with comments, 28%. Expose him. We're watching. Erica, still seated near the prosecution's table, leaned forward, just enough for her voice to carry. Officer Cooper, is your record not already under internal review for misconduct? She asked, tone almost casual. Almost. Cooper froze, eyes narrowing. That's not relevant. It is if you are using your badge to target citizens based on skin color. Erica cut in her words, sharp as glass. The judge's gaze flicked between them, clearly aware that the room was no longer under her full control. Jenna, standing beside Cooper, raised her hand slightly, almost pleading. I was just following orders. I had no say in Alicia's head, turned sharply toward her. Following orders doesn't erase personal responsibility, officer. You can't hand off accountability like a baton. You either uphold the law or you break it. The room went still again. You could almost hear the weight of those words landing on Jenna's shoulders. Near the side door, Green's tall frame appeared. His presence alone seemed to shift the balance in the room. He stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. For the record, this entire incident, including the unlawful stop, will be reported directly to the Department of Defense, effective immediately. Maya caught that on the live stream, and the comment feed went wild. DOD is watching. It's over for them. Accountability. And then the door at the back creaked open. In walked Commissioner Hayes, his polished shoes echoing against the marble floor. His eyes scanned the courtroom, but when they landed on the front row, something in him faltered. There, seated with an unshakable calm, was his mother. Her gaze was steady, no anger, no drama, just the quiet, piercing look of someone who knows the truth and expects you to face it. The commissioner's lips parted slightly, as if he had something to say, but no words came. Cooper glanced back at him, searching for support. None came. Then it happened. A man in the second row rose to his feet, clapping once, twice before others joined in. Within seconds, a small wave of applause rolled through the courtroom. It wasn't loud or celebratory. It was deliberate, almost defiant. The judge tapped her gavel. Order in the court. But the sound was thin against the undercurrent building in that room. I swear you could feel the shift. The power that had been in Cooper's hands was gone. The weight of public opinion, the exposure on a live feed, the undeniable data, it was all pressing down on him now. Alicia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This isn't about me, Your Honor. It's about the law and whether it applies equally to every person in this city. That's all I've ever asked. Cooper stared at her, a muscle working in his jaw, but he said nothing. Even Jenna dropped her eyes to the table. By then, the live stream had doubled its viewership. People from across the country were watching, commenting, recording their own clips to repost. The hashtag 28% was already trending. And as I looked around that courtroom, I knew one thing: this wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a reckoning. The courtroom was still humming from the last round of revelations, but Alicia wasn't here to bask in the shock. She stepped forward into the open space between the tables like she owned the floor. Her voice was calm, deadly calm. Officer Cooper, she began, her gaze locked on him. I'll give you 3 choices. 1, your charges are dismissed, you resign, and you disappear from the force. 2, you resign immediately, no badge, no pension. Or 3, she let the words hang in the air just long enough for every person to lean forward. You face a full-scale federal investigation. Every stop, every report, every lie, on record, in public. The words echoed off the walls. Cooper shifted in his seat, his smirk twitching into something more brittle. From the back, Green's voice boomed like a gavel strike. And let me be clear, the Pentagon will be watching whichever path you take. His eyes didn't blink. You won't hide behind a desk. You won't hide at all. Cooper swallowed, then forced a chuckle. I didn't want any of this, he said, his voice just a touch too defensive. Orders came down from above. You think I had a choice? I was told. You were told. Alicia cut in her tone, sharpening to profile people because of the color of their skin. And you followed. That's not an order. That's a decision you made. Your decision. She didn't raise her voice, but every syllable seemed to slice through the air. Then she opened her case file and pulled out a thin folder. And since we're talking choices, here's one you made 3 years ago. She flipped the first page. Suspended without pay for falsifying stop reports. Another page. 2 complaints from black drivers you never filed with Internal Affairs. She slid the file toward the judge. Would you like me to keep going? We can read them together. Loudly. Cooper's eyes darted around, searching for someone, anyone to step in, but no one moved. From the side, Commissioner Hayes stood. His voice was steady, but the glance he gave his mother in the front row was anything but casual. Your Honor, he said, I propose immediate reforms to the department, anti-bias training, civilian oversight, and full public access to all stop data. No closed doors, no hidden records. The gallery erupted in murmurs. This was no longer just a takedown of one officer. This was a threat to the system that made him possible. Alicia didn't miss a beat. She reached into her case one last time and withdrew a single sheet of paper. Then let's make it official, she said, stepping toward Hayes. This memorandum locks in those reforms within 24 hours. No delays, no excuses. And yes, she turned toward Maya's camera. This is being recorded live. Maya zoomed in on the document, her lens catching the bold header, Immediate Department Reform Mandate. The comment stream on her feed was exploding. Sign it, do it now. Asked justice for Alicia. In the front row, Lorraine reached over, her fingers curling around her son's hand. Her voice was soft, but it carried like a benediction. Justice is never convenient, son, but it's always necessary. Something in the room shifted. You could feel it at the point where a man realizes he's cornered. Cooper's jaw worked, his shoulders sagged, and finally, he reached for the pen. The scratch of ink across paper was almost louder than the whispers. When he pulled the pen back, it was done. His signature glared up at him like a sentence. Maya lifted her phone to show the crowd. The live stream count was already breaking 150,000. Screens across the country were watching the same thing: an officer once untouchable, now signing away the shield that had protected him. And as Cooper's hand dropped to his lap, his face seemed to collapse under the weight of it. The man who'd walked into court, sure of his power, now looked like someone who'd just realized the world had been watching and judging every second. 6 months later. 6 months can change a lot. if people let it. When the camera crews returned to the city, they found Cooper in a very different uniform, plainclothes, a stack of training manuals under one arm. He had just finished 200 hours of anti-bias and community accountability courses. And in a move that surprised everyone, he became the first officer in state history to stand before the legislature and admit under oath to his own misconduct. "I was wrong," he told them, his voice flat but steady. "Not because someone told me to say it, because I finally understand what I did." Jenna's transformation was quieter but no less striking. She turned in her badge, walked away from the force, and issued a public apology that ran in the local paper. The next week, she joined a nonprofit teaching high school students their constitutional rights. "If I'd known mine better," she told a reporter, "I might have respected theirs." Maya, the young woman with the camera, became something of a folk hero online. Her footage from that day earned her a full journalism scholarship. Now, instead of live streaming from courthouse steps, she's chasing leads as an investigative reporter, still chasing the truth, just with a press badge instead of a phone. And Lorraine, well, she didn't just watch change happen. She helped shape it. The community elected her as chair of the new Civilian Oversight Board. Now she spends her days reviewing police conduct reports, her presence a constant reminder that the people are watching and they will be heard. As for Alicia, she never slowed down. Back at the Pentagon, her role grew, her voice cutting through the noise with more authority than ever. She was still the same woman who stood her ground in that courtroom, but now her influence reached far beyond its walls. The last time we saw her, it was after a closed-door hearing on national security oversight. The marble hallway was quiet except for the sound of her heels on the floor. She stopped at the microphones, glanced at the small crowd of reporters, and said simply, "Character over color. Truth over assumption, accountability over authority." She didn't wait for questions. She just smiled, turned toward the light at the end of the corridor, and walked out, leaving the rest of us standing there knowing we'd just witnessed more than a personal victory. We'd seen the start of a shift on someone. And that's the kind of story we tell here on Mr. Mac's Stories Moments, where courage, truth, and accountability rise above prejudice. Today's journey reminded us that real change begins when people choose character over color, truth over assumption, and responsibility over excuses. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, I'd love for you to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Mr. Mac's Stories so you never miss another powerful moment. Your support means more than, it's what fuels our team to keep creating stories that matter, stories that challenge, and stories that stay with you long after they end. And remember, here at Mr. Mac's Stories, every tale is more than just a story. It's a spark for change.